welcome back to my channel. And if this is your first time here, then hi, my name is Lauren. And on my channel, we mostly talk about anything luxury, but we also discuss lifestyle and beauty. So if you're interested in any of these topics, please consider subscribing to my channel and we'll get started with the video. So in today's video, I'm presenting you the top 10 tips that I use to save for luxury items. I'm not vastly wealthy, but I'm able to get a few designer items a year using these tricks. So if that sounds interesting to you, then please keep on watching. So the first piece of advice that I can give you is to create a wish list for the year in accordance to your budget. So what that means is you want to first create a budget for the year of however much you're going to spend on designer goods. And then once that budget is established, you want to create a wish list of the items that you are interested in, but that do not exceed the maximum budget that you have set. So for example, if your budget is around $10,000, just for the sake of argument, per year to spend on designer goods, then you can start making a list of the items that you like that are underneath $10,000 and that you think would be beneficial to add to your collection. I also think that it's important to have realistic and reasonable expectations. And while we would all, like to add a lot of items to our wish list, for example, I think that I even added an AP watch to one of my wish lists one year. I know that it's not realistic because this item is very much out of my budget. So I think it's important to focus on the pieces that you can have now, on the pieces that are attainable and that are within your budget. Rather than daydreaming about like really expensive pieces that you will never have. So I think it's important to have realistic expectations and to create your wish list after having established a budget. The next tip is perhaps the most important one and also my favorite one, is the one that I call eyes on the prize. I think it's honestly hilarious. And so what that means is once you establish that you want to buy something, once you have done your research and everything, is to not get distracted. And I think that this is really hard to do, especially if the item is really expensive. I think it's very easy to get distracted with other smaller things that seem more easily attainable. So for example, SLGs are something that I obviously love, but instead of spending a lot of money on 3 or 4 SLGs, I prefer to save for bigger purchases. And once you have, set your heart on something like a handbag or an expensive piece of jewelry, I think it's important to see your goals and kind of, wait and have the patience necessary for you to save enough money and to not quote waste it on smaller items. So remember, eyes on the prize. So the next trick would be to cut down on your expenses and to rethink your budget. So for example, do you really need a subscription to Netflix plus Hulu plus Discovery plus whatever? I think it's important to reduce those subscriptions as much as you can because you don't use them constantly, and I think that if you perhaps only have one, for example, out of those 3, that's more than enough. Also, gym memberships can become very expensive, so if you can, to the extent of it, work out at home, I think that this is actually something that I do. I don't have a gym membership, and I'm able to save some money that way. I think also having, coffee every morning at Starbucks, while it seems tempting, and of course, once in a while, I'll treat myself to Starbucks, I think that every morning it's not the greatest idea. And if you can also, cut down on takeaway food and cook at home instead, I think that you would be able to save a little bit of money here and there. So really rethink your budget. So my next piece of advice would be to take a look at your closet and to try and determine what you can sell, of course, without having regrets, to try and fund for your next purchase. This is something that I honestly really like to do, and I try, I don't always do it, but I try to abide by the one in, one out rule, which means that if you're getting something new, then you have to let go of something old. This is especially something that I try to do for designer bags, simply because, well, first of all, I don't have infinite money, wishful thinking, and then I also don't have infinite space. I still live in an apartment, and so I, live in a small space, and I try to make the best use out of that space. And so if that means, trying to let go of something that is just like sitting around and honestly like collecting dust. I think it's better to use that money and then fund for something that you will use a lot more often, and that will, justify the space that it's occupying. So that way you're able to save some money. I think that it's a great idea. So personally, I try to abide by the one in, one out rule, especially when it comes to bigger items, such as bags, shoes, things like that. It really does make sense. So my next piece of advice is to stay away from trends. And that's actually in connection with the earlier trick that I just gave you, which was to take a look at your closet. I think that if you invest your money in classic pieces, by the time that you're ready to sell them or you no longer use them, they'll be worth a lot more money than what you paid for. So in the end, you'll have made a benefit, which is really nice. And I think that, for example, I bought a Chanel watch a long time ago. It was my first Chanel bag and I wasn't wearing it, honestly. And so I decided to sell it, and I was able to sell it for more than twice as much the amount of money that I paid for in the beginning. And first of all, I used that money to fund for something else, but then I also had the self-satisfaction of having, quote, made money off of it, which was really nice. So if you invest your money in timeless classics from good brands that will be here forever, you should have no problem reselling them for a premium. My next tip would be to research the item that you're getting. Of course, to do some research on, will you wear it? Will you use it? Is this something that's going to fit in your closet, that's going to fit with other items that you already have? So definitely watch reviews on YouTube and then also read reviews online and maybe look at a few Instagram pictures. But what I also mean by doing research is try to look into where you can get this precise item for the cheapest. Is it in the boutique? Is it sometimes at department stores? I think this is one of the best ways actually to get an item for a little bit cheaper, because oftentimes they will have, a discount code, for example, even 10% on something like a designer item. And so for that reason, department stores are usually a very good place to buy designer goods. Another one would be, of course, online on websites such as Farfetch or Net-a-Porter. They also have discount codes that are available for you, and they also have sales of designer items that you may be able to benefit from. So out of all those three, for new items, obviously not pre-loved, but for new items, I would definitely recommend checking out online for some codes and also checking out some department stores. You can also take a look at the clearance racks. Sometimes you will find some interesting things. So yeah, definitely do some research when you have found an item that you like. My next tip is to diversify your streams of income. So obviously have your main job. I think that makes sense for everyone. But you can also make some passive income, for example, out of having some property and some investment properties. I think this would be, the main thing. Other than that, if you're not quite there yet, like myself, that's totally fine. There are other options. YouTube is one. Of course, this is also something that I obviously like about creating YouTube videos. It gives me some additional money. Otherwise, there are, some part-time jobs such as waitresses, for example, or even what I would call side hustles. We always have something that's very characteristic about us, about our abilities. So really think outside of the box here. For example, for somebody like me, I speak French, I'm fluent in French, so one of the things that I could do is I could become, a translator, I could become a nanny on my, what I call lost hours. So instead of sitting on the couch and, watching TV and in the end not doing much, I could use those hours to do those things, and I think that it would, help me out in my goal of reaching more and more designer goods or acquiring more and more designer items. I think this is a great idea. So if, to the extent possible, you can diversify your streams of income, then this is a really great way to fund for designer goods. My next tip is something really interesting because it doesn't only apply to designer goods. It basically applies to everything else, and it is to use a credit card when you make a purchase, especially a large purchase, rather than using either a debit card or even cash. Like I've seen some people, at the Chanel store with a big fat stack of cash, and obviously, they get looked at quite a bit for many different reasons. But if you can, to the extent possible, use a credit card for large purchases, and I would say even for everything, that's what I do. Even when I, get a $2 beverage, I will use my credit card. you will be able to rack up a lot of points, especially with those large purchases. And then what you can do later is to convert these credit card points into money that you can use to fund for other designer items. So this is pretty much wonderful. I absolutely love doing that. And this is something that I would recommend for anything else really other than designer goods. Even if you came across my video and you're not necessarily interested in designer goods, well, first let me ask you this question: how the hell are you not interested in designer goods? Because they are the best thing ever. But anyway, even if you're not, I think that you can use this money for pretty much anything else. Like for example, you know, my mom uses that on travel. That's kind of the thing that she's interested in. So you can really use that for anything that you're interested in. But for me, it is designer goods, and I hope that it's the case for you too. My next piece of advice is to take advantage of the tax refund system in Europe. So whenever you visit Europe, you will get 12% back on all of your purchases that are of 175 euros or more. So obviously this applies to like basically any designer goods. I can't really think of many designer goods that are below 175 euros for some sad reason. So for that reason, you will be able to, once you fill out the forms and get to the airport, this will be stamped, and then you will be able to get your money back, to get the 12% out of everything that you have spent on. So what I try to do usually is that I will hold off on buying things for the year in the US if I know that I'll be traveling to Europe later in the year. And then once I get there, I basically buy like 3 or 4 things. And of course, I know it may seem like, you know, a lot at the same time, but you are able to save those 12%. So if you are saving 12% on something like, you know, $7,000, well, this is quite a bit of money that you can also use to fund for your next designer purchase. So this is really something that I love to take advantage of. You can also shop around at the boutiques in the European airports. This is also something I like to do. So when I'm there, or even if I know that somebody will be visiting me, such as my mom, for example, I always try and ask her, hey, can you pick this up for me? Because first of all, the prices in euros are still a little bit interesting. Depending on the brand, like Chanel, it's not super interesting, but LV, for example, it really is. You're able to save a bunch of money. I recently unboxed on my channel the Louis Vuitton Nice Vanity. By the way, if you're interested in seeing the unboxing, I will leave the video in the little information link over here for you to see it. But I was able to get it at the Paris airport, and I saved a bunch of money. I won't tell you how much, you will have to find that out in that video, but it was a bunch of money. So I would really recommend that you do that as well. And my last piece of item is remember that outlets are your BFF. It's short and sweet, but honestly, it works so well. They have beautiful designer items for a lot less money than in the stores. And honestly, it doesn't really matter if it's from this season or this collection, or if it's from last year's. For brands such as Moncler, for example, I think this makes a massive difference. So there is a Moncler store at the Woodbury Outlets by New York City, and the prices are worth the trip, even from the DC area, and that's saying much because obviously it's like 4 hours away from here. But it really makes sense to buy that jacket over there rather than in store here. You're able to save a bunch of money because, you know, these are jackets that have been sold previously that are no longer sold in the store. Especially, for example, if you go there during the summer, or like during, you know, late spring, early summer, when basically nobody wants to wear coats or nobody wants to look at coats. That's when you can have the best prices. So really remember, outlets are your BFF. And my last tip is a bonus one, and it's to remember that the right accessories will luxe up any kind of outfit. So as long as you invest your money in the right accessories, they will really make any outfit look a lot better. So stop going to the mall every single weekend to visit, you know, clothing stores, but instead invest your money in timeless and classic pieces that will bring out the best of every single outfit. For example, you know, simple clothes plus a Chanel handbag will really give you that wow factor that even something like expensive clothing would do. It's really up to you, but personally I like to spend a lot on accessories and designer goods, and then kind of, you know, reserve my money for that and instead buy cheaper clothes, because I believe that the accessories give the wow factor. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you did enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up. subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one.